After the success of Series 1, a second series of Doctor Who was commissioned the day after Rose was broadcast. However, Christopher Eccleston had decided that one series was enough, and so the production team had to find a new Doctor. Enter the dashing David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, and Billie Piper reprising her role as Rose Tyler. Series 2 had just as much to prove as its predecessor, as not only was it introducing a new Doctor to a generation who may not have been aware with the concept of regeneration, but could lightning strike twice with the quality of stories? Well, today we are here to find out. This is Series 2, ranked from worst to best, all 13 episodes and 10 stories, from the year 5 billion to Victorian Scotland, meeting old friends to 18th century France and a parallel universe and beyond. Let's find out what is the best that Series 2 has to offer. At number 10 we have Fear Her. Unfortunately for Series 2, we start off with the low points of the RTD era and the new series as a whole. With tried and tested horror cliches, poor performances and a script with wasted potential, Fear Her is such a lacklustre episode that I can easily point to as the lowest of Series 2. Children are going missing in the far future of 2012, just before the Olympic Games, but what is the link between the disappearances and the many drawings of Chloe Webber? Whilst the idea of drawings becoming living beings is a good idea, and would be better realised in the Series 8 story Flatline, the story does nothing with it and just feels cheap and uneventful. Ironic considering that this is an episode about the Olympics. I'm all for small scale stories to save on the budget, but you have to make the characters and story interesting, and unfortunately this episode isn't and feels aimless. Production wise, the story feels bland as well. There's no atmosphere or tension to be felt here, and it honestly feels like they just walked onto a council estate and filmed what they could for a few days. Whilst David Tennant and Billie Piper's chemistry might be fun for some, I honestly find them to be irritating and acting like smug idiots most of the time in this series, and this story is no exception. If I can name one positive thing, it's that this TARDIS gag at the start was pretty funny. I only hope in the split second it took to repart the TARDIS, the Doctor had more interesting adventures than this one. At number 9 we have Love and Monsters. Whilst the episode may have gained a cult following over the years, personally, I'm still not a fan. Elton Pope is a young man obsessed with the Doctor. Having briefly met him as a child, he meets a group of people who are equally as obsessed with tracking down the Doctor. Whilst written to be a satire on Doctor Who fandom, and to the episode's credit there are some clever bits here, I find it hard to connect to the characters when they are overpoweringly stupid. Seriously, walking away and not hearing the obvious screaming, I was told that was cliched in GCSE drama, and none of the characters question Victor Kennedy, who was the last person seen with these people who go missing. Really? The script just seems to move and meander to get to the next plot point and feels like it was hastily put together, which I totally get because Russell had to write the episode around the Blue Peter competition, and while I think it's great that William Grantham got his monster into the series, not many people can say that, Peter Kay just plays it way too over the top with an oddly comic northern accent that robs the Absorbal off of any threat. And making Ursula a pavement slab for eternity is not a charming ending, that is a fate worse than death. Whilst the Dr. Light episodes would be some of the series' stronger episodes in later years, the format was unfortunately a weak start with Love and Monsters. Unfortunately, this isn't an episode that tastes like chicken. Number 8, New Earth. Okay, it may sound like I'm trashing this series so far, but trust me, the great episodes are coming. The past 3 choices on this list contain, in my opinion, the worst episodes of the Russell T Davies era. The Doctor and Rose return to the year 5 billion to find the human race populating a new Earth after its destruction, but Cassandra is hiding in the hospital wanting her revenge. This was the first time in the new series that we have been taken to an alien planet. Seriously, after 14 episodes, yes, 14, we finally got there. It's just a shame that this episode is really lame. For an opening episode, it feels surprisingly lacklustre. There are good ideas of the ethics of healthcare when it's revealed that cures have been coming from disease-bred human clones. However, it just lacks an impact because we never get to see the New Earth Society in the episode, so it doesn't hit as hard as the episode wants it to. While there are great makeup effects for the cat nurses and the patients, the rest of the episode looks surprisingly cheap and ends up being a tedious running up and down corridors. The body swapping feels neither funny or original. It just feels baffling to give your new lead actor a story where he has to act camp and possessed by an alien when we should be getting to know this new Doctor more. The tonal shifts just seem biblical in their size, and the whole episode just feels uninvolving, childish, and as I said before, really not funny. On a positive note, I do like the ending for this story as it is quite bittersweet, but I only wish the rest of the episode was better made like this. It really needed to stay on the ward. At number 7 we have The Idiot's Lantern. Doctor Who often thrives upon taking ordinary items and making them scary. Sadly, this episode has mixed results in that regard. In 1953, the Queen's coronation is being broadcast on television. However, ordinary people are turning into monsters, with the only new thing in each house being the television. I think my main problem with this episode is that it feels quite all over the place with its tone, particularly the character Eddie Connolly. You could sum up my problem with this episode in this character. I get the script is making him an abusive bully, but the actor Jamie Foreman just doesn't convince me, as he looks really uncomfortable with the material and doesn't know how to read it. Furthermore, the episode feels like it's doing multiple tones at once: soap opera, horror, film noir, spy, action. And don't get me wrong, when gelled well together this can work, but this unfortunately feels aimless and quite a cluttered mess. In my opinion, they should have focused on one tone and stuck with it. Maureen Lipman is pretty good as the Wire, but even so, she feels wasted here by just shouting how much she's hungry all the time. Finally, the ending has never sat right with me. Going after your abusive dad feels like such a poorly handled message. I get that its heart may be in the right place, but this just feels distasteful for me. Despite good ideas, The Idiot's Lantern falls flat with the script and presentation that holds it back from being truly great. I am unfortunately not hungry for more. Number 6. Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. I may get flack for not putting this higher, and if you're a long time viewer, you're probably sick of me talking about this story, as it has shown up on my Cyberman and Dalek stories ranking videos, but regardless, there is a lot to like about this two-parter. However, I am quite torn on this, literally split between the episodes. I love Army of Ghosts, but feel that Doomsday is lacking in comparison. The build-up in Army of Ghosts is very effective, as the Cybermen are using gaps in the universe to invade Earth from their own parallel version. However, corrupt humans at the Torchwood Tower are the instigators, and the Cybermen seem to be relying on their curiosity and desire for a new energy source to their advantage, as they control members of the Torchwood staff and open the breach to allow the ghosts to reveal themselves as Cybermen. These ideas are fantastic, and the imagery of the ghosts becoming Cybermen is still effective to this day and a brilliant twist. So yeah, we have got everything here: Cybermen using mind control, relying on humanity's curiosity to their advantage, and a massive army of Cybermen in famous Earth landmarks. Why is this so low, you may ask? Well, the problem is the following episode, Doomsday. The Daleks are revealed to be hiding in a sphere that exists outside of reality to escape the Time War, and have made their way to Earth. Both enemies declare war, and I just feel like the story loses a lot of its intelligence, and seems like a kid smashing their action figures together in Toys R Us. Furthermore, the Cybermen then play second fiddle to the Daleks, as they are constantly shot down by them, and don't even get to defeat a single Dalek, which just makes them look like pansies, as this fight is comically one-sided. It's clear Russell T Davies preferred the Daleks to the Cybermen, and while I still enjoy this two-parter on an action level a lot, I personally feel that the setup in Army of Ghosts could have made for a perfect Cyberman story, but Doomsday lets it down. Sadly wasted potential on the Cybermen's part for me, but an entertaining finale nonetheless. Number 5. Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. This was the first Doctor Who story I ever saw, so naturally it holds a special place in my heart of steel. However, rest assured this is not just a nostalgia talking, as this two-parter is a very effective upgrade for the Cybermen in the 21st century. While the original Cybermen were about how prosthetics and fake limbs may take over our lives, this is more inspired by how technology runs our lives. Humans in a parallel Earth are reliant on earpods that download info into their heads from Cybers Industries, but ultimately is used to control them to turn them into Cybermen. The obsession by Cyberman creator John Lumick to survive is very human and will do whatever it takes to achieve immortality, even if it means sacrificing everything that makes us human. Equally, you can see where he's coming from, as with a metal mind there is peace in the world and unity, but the Doctor argues that everyday humans is what makes the world a brilliant place and is great to watch. Furthermore, I like how the Cybermen are defeated by a simple code that turns their emotions back on. It's a scary parallel to how the next upgrade on our own tech is just a simple code and a switch away, and how close the Cybermen are to losing their humanity. This story is a terrific temporary departure for Mickey Smith. It's because of his involvement closely in the plot that the aforementioned code doesn't feel like a cop-out. It's set up very well in the story, as Mickey is the one to see how the average citizen lives by seeing his gran, and this scene gives me a lump in my throat every time I watch, and his departure is so fitting for this story, having outgrown Rose. This two-parter was a brilliant update for the Cybermen in my opinion, and certainly shows them as a force to be reckoned with, that sadly was pretty lacking in the new series, but for the time being, the Silver Giants came back to Doctor Who with a bang. At number 4, we have Tooth and Claw. If I had to pick the most overlooked story of Series 2, it would definitely be this episode, as not many fans seem to appreciate its greatness. Landing in 1879, the Doctor and Rose meet Queen Victoria at the Torchwood House, but discover a monstrous plot by monks who worship a werewolf that they want to bite Queen Victoria and begin the Empire of the Wolf. Tooth and Claw is pretty simple in plot, as it's a werewolf chase story, but where it succeeds is in how polished the whole production feels. It does what Doctor Who does best with legends and horror stories and adding science to it, like they did in the Philip Hinchcliffe era. And seriously, if you replace the 10th Doctor and Rose with the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane, this would fit in perfectly in mid-70s Doctor Who. I don't know whether this is true or not, but apparently Russell T Davies wrote this episode quickly over the course of a weekend to fill a slot in the production schedule, and if that's the case, I'm all the more impressed, as it's a great horror story with action and thrill rides abound. While it may not be the most emotional or most thought-provoking episode of the series, it's still an adrenaline-filled watch. The werewolf holds up surprisingly well despite showing its age a bit in effects, but Uros Lin directs this episode with such clever lighting that the effects aren't as noticeable as you may think. After a shaky start with New Earth, David Tennant seems firmly settled, as he is the Doctor consistently throughout this episode, and he's fantastic to watch. While I don't think it's perfect, as I think Rose Tyler is pretty irritating in this with the "I am not amused" recurring joke that isn't the least bit funny for me. But regardless, Tooth and Claw is an action-packed horror story that definitely deserves a second look. Number 3. School Reunion. This episode was the first attempt to connect the new series with the classic series, rather than just bringing back old monsters, but this time an old companion returns in the form of Sarah Jane Smith. The Doctor, Rose and Mickey investigate strange goings-on at a school, and meet the Doctor's old friend Sarah Jane, and must work together to defeat the Krillitanes from cracking the Stasis paradigm and becoming gods. Whilst I'm not a fan of Rose's attitude towards Sarah Jane, this is still a great story with witty dialogue, heaps of nostalgia, and a great villain played by Anthony Head. I'm impressed with how much Toby Whithouse was able to tackle this much in 45 minutes without any of the central cast feeling underused, even if the ending is a little rushed. Nevertheless, the return of Sarah Jane in K9 is certainly a welcome one. Elizabeth Sladen flawlessly fits back into the series as if she never left, and she rightly deserved her own spin-off series. Her return even has an impact on the current companions as well. Rose realises that her time with the Doctor won't last forever, and Mickey realises that he does feel like the Tin Dog, the spare part that nobody wants, but aspires to be more than that as he joins the Doctor on his travels at the end. With great villains, brilliant callbacks to the past, witty dialogue and excellent performances, School Reunion is a fantastic celebration of the show's past that paves the way for brand new adventures with an old friend. Number 2. The Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit. Like Tooth and Claw, I honestly think this is the most overlooked two-parter of the Russell T Davies era, as it's a terrific base under siege story. The Doctor and Rose land on a planet orbiting a black hole and meet a group of scientists drilling into the planet to find a power source, but a legend from before time has awoken. While I am a sucker for base under siege stories, I think this serial still holds up regardless of that. The supporting cast are terrific, they are all hiding their own weaknesses that the Beast exploits to divide them, but they're very interesting in their own right, and this story has guts to kill most of them off. The Ood are a fantastic creation with a memorable design and a benevolent voice that still gives me chills. Furthermore, I am thrilled that they brought back Gabriel Wolfe from Pyramids of Mars to voice the Beast, as his vocal performance is bedwettingly terrifying. The atmosphere is completely on point with an industrial and gothic looking bass, and the music by Murray Gold is a perfect mix of action-packed and mythical. Whilst the TARDIS being gone may be a bit repetitive at this point in the series, what saves that is the conversation the Doctor and Rose have in the first part, where they discuss what they'll have to do to settle down in life, and it's a lovely scene. See, I can be nice to them. Everything is brought together perfectly for this story, the writing, direction, acting, music, lighting, etc. If you haven't seen this story in a while, I'd highly recommend giving it another watch. It's certainly not a bitter pill. Number 1. The Girl in the Fireplace. This episode is a bold experiment within the series and asks the question, can the Doctor fall in love, and what is it like to fall in love with a time traveller? The Doctor, Rose and Mickey find an abandoned spaceship in the 51st century that's generating enough power to punch a hole in the universe that's connected to 18th century France. The Doctor discovers that the repair droids powered by clockwork have killed the crew using their body parts to repair the ship, and now requires Renette, aka Madame de Pompadour's head, at the age of 37 to complete the repairs. While this story is a technology gone wrong story, there's most definitely a fairy tale subtext to it all, as the Doctor appears to Renette as a young child in her fireplace and becomes her imaginary friend, and they begin to fall in love. Renette is a brilliant character, and she's played fantastic by Sophia Myles, and you can tell the Doctor is a child's fantasy to her, which is conveyed through her performance, but there's also a tragedy behind this romance. The Doctor can come and go as he pleases, but she has to take the long way round, and even when it looks as if the Doctor is stuck with her, the ending is still tragic as time ends up being the story's biggest enemy. The clockwork droids are a wonderful design, looking both from the history and the future at the same time, and they're not inherently evil, they're just doing what they were programmed to do, repairing the ship by any means necessary, even if it means using the crew. The overall effect of this episode is terrific. It feels so alive with its inventiveness and radiant in its confidence, as it has stylish direction from Eros Lin, and this is a gorgeous looking episode. With excellent production values, a brilliant premise, amazing performances, and beautiful music, The Girl in the Fireplace is a romance you won't be forgetting, and is the best episode of Series 2. And that's all for Series 2. In my opinion, a series that punches high and can land with effectiveness, but can crash and burn with some of its episodes, but overall a good debut series for the 10th Doctor, even if his lows can overshadow the highs sometimes. Join me next time as we say hello to Martha Jones, the return of Captain Jack Harkness, the Daleks, and the Doctor's best enemy, the Master. See you all next time, where we'll be voting Saxon.